I'm very happy to be here to talk to you today about Europe's open data champions. I think, as Kirsty was saying, she was saying how essential people are. That's what I'm going to be talking about. So it's not about policy this time. It's not about copyright or about tools or infrastructure. It's the people who are real assets for open. So to make open happen, it's all about the people. And let me take you through this. So as part of one of our strategic arms is it's important. So we work on policy and copyright, and as I mentioned, but this is really about cultural change. So how can you create cultural change? I think we're all interested in that. That's why we're here today. And as part of that, what I'm going to be talking about today, it's not about rocket. There's no rocket science behind this. It's about the people and hearing what they have to say. These are people who are really leading open research, particularly open data in this case, and it's about using those champions to tell peers about the benefits, about the concerns, and about what still needs to be done. And this is what we're showcasing with this site. It actually went live today, so that was actually quite a relief, because otherwise what would I be talking about today? So SPARC Europe's Open Champions. So first off, a disclaimer, these are not the top champions, in Europe, but they are a number of champions. We reached out to a number of European universities, research institutions, and reached out to libraries to ask them, well, which open data champions, who are the leading lights in your institution, who you could interview to tell us more about what their motivations are, what are the activities that they're doing, who do they look to for inspiration, and what still needs to be done to make more of our data open. So we have the Open Champions site. We have Open Access Champions, which we launched last year. And we've got, by the way, we've got several Open Access Champions and Open Data Champions in the room. I didn't know, but you will see I've got some quotes from some of them. And honestly, I didn't agree this with them, but they have some really wonderful things to say. So it's great to see them. So this is the Open Data Champions site. We have about 14 at the moment from 7 different countries. We have, I think before I tell you a little bit about it, let me just take you through what this is. So what you can do is you go to the champions page, and we interviewed these champions, and their stories are there pretty much verbatim. We asked them various questions, as I already referred to, the themes that we're interested in. You can search and filter. They go across all sorts of disciplines: humanities, social sciences, life sciences. They're from various countries, and we really want to showcase more champions, because we've got young researchers, we've got professors, we've got vice chancellor, but we want to have more so that they're meaningful for you in your advocacy. So you can click on one of those champions and go to the questions that you find interesting. You can see their biographic information, and then what you can do is you can download it as a PDF and forward this on. So if you're trying to persuade one of your humanities scholars, there is an example of humanities or a social scientist or whatever, and so you can reuse this. So the more we have of these, the more that we can, the more it's relevant in your advocacy. But it's really showcasing, as you'll see, there are many different motivations why these researchers are sharing their data, and many different practices and projects. And I'm going to showcase a little bit more. So those who have collaborated so far, of course, University of Cambridge, but Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Spain, and Finland so far, and the UK obviously. But as I say, the Netherlands, they will be joining us shortly, and we're looking to showcase more champions. So let me show you So behind these stories, we have a number of great inspiring statements, which I'm going to showcase today. So here we have Professor Proudman. I hope there's no Finn in the audience who. So I hope that over time, openness becomes a standard in the scientific process, and that the respect for open scientific results will be increasingly tied to their transparency. We have Rosie in the audience. Some of us have the privilege of having the funding to generate data, and this should be shared with others. We also have Gustav, who gave a lightning talk. In a world with far more open data, we will have accelerated knowledge development with real-world benefits reflected in better decisions in medicine and in other fields. But we must neither forget that the work for open data will need continuous commitment. So these are some of the examples of some of our champions and what they feel. And these are some of the themes that came up. Partly it had to do with some of the questions we asked, but of course the discussion about how open and how closed, privacy, and what are the consequences, what about the value, what's the personal value, what's the value to my research community, to the international community, to my institution, how does it influence innovation, what does it mean, how does this feed into being a good researcher, research integrity, and how open science feeds into that, and why do I carry out this practice? Of course, change and fear came up quite a bit, how they grapple with it, how do we create faster change, and they tell us a lot about that in their stories. Policy, so 5 minutes? Okay, I better hurry. So there are also, sorry, excuse me. So talking about the influence of policy, the positives, but also not seeing it as just a tick box to check. How does it influence my career? I think Laurent already asked that question. And how can we make it more important for that? And also, how does it feature or not feature in research evaluation? And what about the practicalities and education and support? So another quote here. If we're talking about the reward structure, because that's really critical here, it's perhaps unrealistic to expect that the scholars who've built their careers in a more closed system will just change their ways. So the most crucial thing in all disciplines is to show that the new way is the better way. I think that's a nice way to start. So if having looked at all of these stories, these are some of the things that came out. So reward structures are upheld by those who benefited from it, of course. So that we need to keep in mind. But what we need to do is we need to go beyond rewarding the paper, the book, the final output or end product, and reward the quality of the process and all the elements in that. So data and code, the steps, being a responsible researcher right from start to finish. And we need to reward the solid research, transparency, and evidence-based. Marta, she said, you want to do good science after all. That's why you're doing your PhD, because you care about uncovering the truth. I thought that was a great one. And also with rewards, we need to prove how reputation is increased. So, for example, use data citation and make them count. Perhaps we should also limit the future grant-winning successes of researchers who don't share their data for the benefit of others, was a suggestion made, and also to grant open data awards. There are a number, growing actually, of data awards, so to demonstrate how meaningful openness is. Gustav said, align academic incentives with open practices, here. What they also said was about sharing more data. To share more data, we need to change the reward system, as we just heard. We need to have continued commitment, so financial commitment, institutional commitment, programs like we heard this morning. We need to have a long-term data stewardship in place to support them. We need to comply well with funder policy requirements, not just a tick box and have real quality data. We need to improve our infrastructure, the storage, deal with a whole range of data for a whole range of disciplines, standardize on open formats, and simplify the process. This came up quite a bit amongst the champions. We really need to make it as simple as possible. And we need to educate on the gains, of course, that we know, and the services that are in place and the infrastructure that support. And we should also ensure that that's part of researchers' education. We heard that from Lithuania and others about how to embed that in teaching good research practice amongst PhDs, for example. So, summarising, champions are really our assets to open. And you see, sometimes you're hard pushed that if you work together as champions and share your knowledge, that's really important. I've got 2 minutes, so I think I'm going to end with this slide. So, who are your champions? We would like to showcase them. And I think I'd really like to emphasize how important these champions are and to work more closely together with them and to, of course, to feed them with important information, but really to gather the needs, the expectations, to find out what ideas they have, also their concerns. So to have that continued discussion with them and to work together with your champions much more. Right, so I'd like to end on that point.
So are there any questions? Well, that does help our timekeeping.
There is one, there is one.
Oh, no, there is one?
I have a bit of a broad question, but it seems to me that kind of sharing research data and the whole kind of ideas around open access are more widespread in like Scandinavian countries, obviously the UK, than other countries like maybe Southern Europe countries, France. And I was just wondering, do you think it's because their universities are kind of less research intensive, or because maybe the culture is different? And also, if you are trying to reach out to maybe these research communities in other ways than kind of trying to recruit data champions in those countries, for example.
Yeah, it's actually quite a big question that. There are quite a few cultural differences. Also, where SPARC Europe and SPARC US is a very different situation, how things are run in the US politically, but also your value system. So also the value systems in Europe, they differ, so that also influences how far you are with your open data or research data management and open access. Also, if you look at the UK, a big focus has been very much also on the REF, and how many resources do you have then for open data, apart from Cambridge, of course, but no, only teasing. There are so many aspects and cultural differences. Yeah, are you from France?
Yes.
Yes, so France is also in a different space and there's different speed, but one of our functions at SPARC Europe is to try to help provide good practice and to share good practice, and that people at their own speeds, at least that they know what others are doing, and that what some of the other champions from different countries are doing. It's true. I mean, one of the big challenges with the open data champions is we've tried to, we have been focusing on libraries. We reached out to libraries and then to approach their research data champions. And there are far more libraries working on open access than there are on open data, or some of them are moving into this space and some are actually quite well embedded. But it was actually, they are a bit more reticent to kind of, to know what's going on. Or perhaps they also don't, they're not aware as well as they are with open access as to who is doing great work in the research communities on open data. So this is why there is a bit of a limited list so far. If we would have reached out, and actually we have also had this challenge, I've met several researchers and they said, we want to be part of this. So I reached out to the library, nothing came back. So we don't have them, unfortunately. So maybe the approach should be a slightly different one, but we want to also help stimulate the collaboration between libraries and researchers and to support that. So that's also a challenge there. Yes, and of course, you know, some like to be showcased as I'm an open data champion. We also had somebody, not mentioning any names, this will really count towards her career progression. She said, well, when am I going to be up there? Because this needs to be put forward to my board, yeah, and it will count for something because their institution, and it's a big university, values open. So some feel it's a good thing to be part of it, and some say, oh, you know, I'm not an open data champion. I just, you know, this is important to me, or this is normal. So yeah, so there are all sorts of challenges, but I think the more stories we have from the more countries and the more disciplines, the better, because others can relate to that better. Yeah. So we'd like some French ones, please.
Okay, we'll need to draw a line under that. So if everyone could thank Vanessa.